The Labor government continues to implement the one-size-fits-all bureaucratic policy that just does not work. One issue that I hear constantly is the lack of childcare in regional Australia. In my electorate, many families cannot find childcare or a place for their child. This is preventing parents from returning to work sooner. Our communities need availability and accessibility as well as affordability. Centres are capping enrolments, closing rooms and asking children to stay home. I've spoken to families stuck on waiting lists, unable to work because there are no places to look after their children. In February this year, the Labor government opened the Community Childcare Fund Competitive Round 4 Disadvantaged and Vulnerable Communities Grant. The intent of the outcome for the community grant were to support early childhood education care (ECEC) services operating in underserved, disadvantaged and vulnerable communities to be able to address or have increased capacity to address community-level barriers to child participation in early childhood services. Also to increase the number of children from vulnerable or disadvantaged families and communities accessing ECEC. Viability of ECEC services operating in disadvantaged communities, including in areas with fluctuating and/or low short-term demand. Also increased availability of ECEC places in disadvantaged communities with high or unmet demand. Whilst I welcome these grants and its intent, it's another example of bureaucratic nonsense. This grant was open for 1 month. In just 1 month, it appears the Labor government and the minister obviously don't want anybody to apply. The eligibility criteria meant small community kindergartens in rural and remote Australia who wish to expand to make daycare services available are ineligible to receive the Community Childcare Fund for disadvantaged and vulnerable communities because they cannot get approval for childcare services under the Family Assistance Law until the grant is received and the facility is built in the first place. So what genius came up with this idea? Instead of taking action to improve access to childcare for rural Australians, Labor is spending billions on subsidising childcare costs for families in the big city, whilst ignoring rural and regional Australia. In September 2022, I wrote to the Treasurer about increasing community concerns around the lack of childcare in the electorate of Flynn, especially in our more rural regions, and the financial barriers in entering the sector when establishing a family daycare centre. This government must deliver more access to early childhood education and care places to support Australians returning to the workforce and the